Good morning, everybody. We just wanted to do a little Q&A with a public adjuster today. And Jonathan is with Northstar Claims, and you guys have been one of our favorite PAs to work with. Very thorough, very homeowner focused, and honest. You guys don't nickel and dime. You kind of, you make sure that the homeowner's made whole, and it's been really nice to work with you guys. So just wanted to have you kind of introduce yourself, talk about your start, and so on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. I really love working with contractors and love working with homeowners. So really why I started, it was based on, I was actually a contractor before. So actually, well, back up a little bit. I was actually in nonprofit work for several years. And actually the pandemic, and did construction, did a lot of different things in maintenance and stuff like that for the nonprofit. COVID hit, I lost my nonprofit and couldn't raise money, couldn't do anything like anyone, and got into sales. And I was in construction sales and started storm chasing and going after the hailstorms, going after the different wind events, and fell in love with helping homeowners out navigate their insurance. And at that point, I ran into a few public adjusters, thought that they were scumbags, and actually thought like they were just trying to cheat the homeowner out of more money. And my first estimate that I ran into a public adjuster, my estimate was $60,000. Their estimate was $180,000.
Oh, 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. I was like, that's crazy. And so I really had a bad taste in my mouth for public adjusting. And so I kind of was like, now I'm a public adjuster. So I was like, well, why did you change? And it was because I actually started to act as a public adjuster, which is now very frowned upon.
Yeah.
And big frowned upon.
Yep.
And I actually crossed that line way too many times. I remember getting on the phone call with an adjuster. I still remember his name, but I'm not going to tell you his name. And he's like, what's your PA license number? And I was like, click. I'm like, and so then I kind of realized, how do I navigate this and not be a PA? And I kind of left the storm chasing scene and got into, was asked to be a manager of a small roofing company like yourself. And it was actually a home construction company. And I was doing that, and we actually got called to a dinner with a friend of mine, and he was a public adjuster and an independent adjuster, which is actually kind of funny because that's illegal now.
Independent for insurance companies, and then public adjuster for the homeowner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
he was
dual. Yeah, no, definitely one of those things where it's not every state allows that. But he was talking about how he's really helping the homeowner understand their policy, understand what kind of things they can get out of their policy and what's covered. And so it kind of started me down a path of like, okay, what about this public adjuster? Is it a good option? Is it a good career? And met up with a public adjuster who owned a company. This was in Missouri when I was in Missouri. And met with a public adjuster. We clicked, and he took me under his wing. And so I started working for him.
Was this the same one that you guys met at dinner with?
No, it was a different public adjuster.
Strictly public adjuster?
Just strictly.
Okay.
He was actually, Jared Allen was his name. He was a phenomenal guy. Still good friends. He's on my speed dial when I ever have a question. But my tagline in my business is that righteous outcome in every claim. Like, that's what I want. Like, I want the right outcome.
So something fair that's fair to the homeowner, to the insurance company, basically everybody involved. Not necessarily like you were mentioning the $180,000 estimate where every single thing is broken down and things are added just to make the whole claim kind of inflated.
Yeah, so there is inflated estimates, and that's definitely something that is out there quite a bit. However, what I've kind of learned is that contractors lose, like contract start companies. The list of how many contractors start businesses in 1 year is ridiculous.
After a big storm.
After a big storm, it's
hundreds,
like,
if not more,
because last year, like we had this storm up in up north,
Big Lake, Monticello.
Monticello area, and like literally, I went up there because I had one claim up there because it was such big hail. Like it was, if the insurance company denied it, it was like, what do you think? What's going on? But I went there and I saw names I'd never saw before.
As
like
the
as
contractors,
contractors, like you're like every house had a different name, a different sign out front,
right?
and then of course the statistics go that in 10 years maybe one of them survive.
Yeah, I think by 5 years, like 80% of them are gone.
80% have gone in 5 years,
Yeah.
and then by 10 years, 95. Like statistics for roofing companies, exterior companies, is staggering. It's
Yeah.
sad, and the number one reason that they don't survive is because they don't charge enough.
Well, it's the cash flow, yeah, and that's also the insurance claim. So that's kind of the things that we've been running into and trying to deal with, figure out different ways to work it. Because you're not allowed to discuss the policy as a contractor, you're so limited. And the homeowner involvement, because of the industry being the way it is, there's a lot of inexperienced representatives from different roofing companies coming over and saying, we're going to manage this claim for you. Homeowners are kind of used to just everything being done for them. They're not really interested in being involved. They kind of see the insurance company as, being loyal to them and then doing what's right. And then we're seeing all of this kind of start turning around, and now it's the homeowner that has to get involved, or they have to get a public adjuster, or even go the attorney route in some cases where it's super difficult. And this expectation is just kind of, the wrong expectation was built up over time. Now it's becoming the switch to the homeowner to be involved and actually, like, look at their policy, read what they're actually paying for. And now it's the contractors that are, kind of, you have to be experienced enough to be able to navigate that process, kind of, explain it to the homeowner, like what are the next steps going to be as far as, what your options are as far as the legal, the code documents and so on, but then also be able to kind of guide them maybe in the way of like a public adjuster mentioned that there's other options too, that, if you're not experienced, if you don't do well with paperwork and so on, if you want to make sure that your property is brought back to whole, there are experts on this, and contractors were not those experts. We're only allowed to do the code related items and repairs. I can document all day long. I submit it, and then it's up to the homeowner to say, okay, you guys have to make me whole.
So another thing that I do is I write estimates. I'll do estimates for contractors if they want it. Not something I really try to do a lot of because I don't. It's tedious work. But I wrote an estimate for a contractor a couple weeks ago, and they sent me an email from the insurance company. Hey, how do we respond to this? And it's like line 36, policy only pays for this. Line 32, like it kind of kept on going on. Policy only pays. And now what happens there is now the contractors and the homeowner are kind of in a pin. Like you can't technically say, well, let me read your policy.
No, I can't.
You can't. And so now the homeowner can ask for their policy. But if they ask for the policy, like a lot of times, like I've had it, even as a public adjuster, I have not been able to get policy sometimes, or it's been a headache to get a policy. Just like, hey, I need my policy, and they give you the I can't even speak. The declaration page, which is part of the basic breakdown of it. Yeah. It's what shows you your values and shows you your endorsements. But even too, I ran into a claim last week where they're like, hey, will you help me see if I have coverage? They only sent the declaration page, but in the declaration page, he has $30-some thousand of matching.
And it references endorsements, exclusions, which you don't see in the first page.
Yeah, but in that, it's basically he has $30K for his siding and roofing, and you're like, okay, and the homeowner told me on the phone, my policy doesn't pay for matching. It's like, well, you have the endorsement. So typically, most policies don't have matching built into it. You can buy, you can add coverage, you can do these different things to add that back into your policy. However, the state statute does say that it needs to be like, kind, and quality, and so that kind of what my job as a public adjuster is to look at the policy and look at the statutes. What is the insurance supposed to do, and what are the statutes state that they need to follow.
Sure.
And so as we go into that, we kind of start to document the loss and say, okay, what is broken? Is it the roof? Is it the siding? Is it interior, exterior? What do we have here? And we document the loss, and we help the homeowner understand what they need to do to fulfill their policy. I think the biggest error in all of construction, in storm chasing, if you will, not so much construction, but that the
insurance restoration, repairs, and so on.
Insurance restoration. That's the best way to put it. Is like the duties after loss
Mhm.
for that is a section in everyone's policy, your homeowner's policy, my homeowner's
Yep.
policy. We have duties that we have to do.
Yeah.
And that's what the public adjuster's job is to do that if the homeowner doesn't understand how to do it. Now, the homeowner can do it, but they need to understand every aspect, what they're reading. And unfortunately, um, as this industry goes, the insurance companies have money, and
Yeah.
they've spent a lot of money on lawyers to write these policies. And so, and that's fine, and they should because they're trying to protect their.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that there's definitely a misunderstanding in the world of, like, you're a contractor, you're trying to fix the home.
Mhm.
A public adjuster is simply trying to make sure that the whole policy is held to,
Mhm.
and the insurance company is making sure that they actually are paying for the right things.
Yep.
And we all need to make money.
Mhm.
I want insurance companies to make a profit. I want contractors to make a profit.
Yep.
I want myself to make a profit. But that only comes together if actually we work together in unison
Mhm.
and actually do the right thing every single time.
Yeah, educate the homeowner, bring the right people in that would be able to explain all of the legal jargon that's in the policies, because it's not, a lot of it is legalese, like it's,
Oh, yeah, no,
it's very difficult to understand. And
It's like reading Greek.
I mean,
you
I'm
know?
reading my policy closer than ever, and I mean, we have a great agent that's been very helpful, and he actually included coverages that we don't see with that insurance company in other places. But he's not, kind of the typical insurance agent. A lot of them could be going to brokers where they just go for the cheapest policy, cheapest premium, and then they, maybe the insurance company advertises a lot, maybe it's just somebody that's, again, like the cheapest premium, but you have an event, you have a hailstorm, or it could be water or any kind of different claims, ice dams in the winter, and then you start to see that, oh, I don't actually have coverage for this. So that premium that you were saving maybe $50 a month on ends up costing you maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands in some cases.
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that I really wish that there was better education for the homeowner, based on, okay, how do we deal with a storm restoration aspect, or just insurance restoration? Like, okay, I have a pipe leak. What do I do now? And also more understanding of how to buy the right policy. Because you need to know, like you said, if you spend $50 extra a month, and it's one of those bills that just you pay your mortgage, and when you pay your mortgage, that's the insurance is paid as well.
And often it's tied to the mortgage.
It is. It oftentimes is. So because of that, it's really good to actually buy a better. It's one of those things you don't really think about it, but if you have a fire in your home and you can't rebuild your home because you didn't have enough coverage, that's terrible and it's horrible. And even to a contents, like, I don't think anyone understands, like, what you have in your home is valuable. And, like, even to a point where it's like one of my good friends, we were talking, I'm like, he's asking me, like, hey, what do you think about my policy and different things like this? And I said, well, what do you have of value? We're in Minnesota, and November comes around, everyone likes to hunt. And it's like, what are your guns worth? Like, that's something that you have, whatever you have in your safe, you need to think about.
At least take photos of
photos of that. But for him, he has a rookie card of Wayne Gretzky.
Ooh.
And that's
not fireproof.
It's not fire. It's in his fireproof his case, but it's worth something. It's worth a lot, actually. And so it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, like, you should have with those type of things, you can actually buy specific policies to cover that specific item, or at least have enough money in your policy and your contents to be able to recover that. And so, so there's a lot of things that we should do as homeowners, and even myself, I sometimes won't do it. Like, video your house, like, go around every room, open every drawer. Like, it takes 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how big your house is. But like, if something happens, you're going to be a lot better off.
Well, even if you're getting like remodeling done in your house, just take a look and maybe, take pictures through the process and see how much work actually goes into it, how many different trades are involved. We're talking if
Yeah.
you're doing like moving walls or something, from the framing to structural engineers, you're talking, actual like framer that comes out and does it, then the drywall, the electrical, the insulation, and so on.
Mhm.
All these things, and when you're trying to put the house, I mean, it depends on the way you write it, but when you guys write it up, you go by the trades and then the amount of work required. Any
Correct.
finishing trim, like any custom work on the inside of the house, whether it was the stain from the factory or enamel, additional work, additional trades, and all that adds up to just large estimates. And a lot of times our clients will be surprised by the amounts, but then you're looking at it about how much work actually gets organized for that project. It makes sense. It adds up, and you have to make it line by line because that's the insurance company's process.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that we don't realize is that if we go to the grocery store right now, eggs are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but that little increase of, like, I think GAF sent out, and I think GAF and Orange
Yeah.
the shingle manufacturers just released something that their prices are going up in April.
Yep.
Right. Everything's going up.
Mm-hmm.
And last time I checked,
like what, 3 times a year for the last few years?
Yeah, no, it's been wild.
Yep.
And the thing is that and I think insurance companies are actually in a bind too. So say, to rebuild your house, let's just use arbitrary numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Your house, your value at $300,000, right? And now you also got to remember too, like with value of your home and the value of your policy is different, because like your value of a home might be up higher, but the land has got some value.
Sure.
And so like we're talking about the structure on the land.
Mm-hmm.
It's $300,000, and to rebuild that, 5 years ago might have been $300,000.
Yep.
But your policy hasn't changed over the time that they've just renewed you, and now it's probably closer to $500,000 or even more in some cases. So now you have to think about that. But if you, as an insurance company, if they just say we're going to jump you from $300 to $500, that's $200,000 more coverage.
Yep.
And so that's going to cost more money.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to have to come to you as a homeowner and be like, hey, by the way, I have to increase your premium by this amount of money. And that's not going to go over well.
Yep.
Because they're going to be like, what? And then
they shop around.
Then they're going to shop around and whatever they may do. But the thing is that you need to understand as a homeowner that your number one asset is your home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you lose that, like,
that's the biggest investment for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
We have insurance companies and homeowners and contractors. We need to take care of their number one asset. Mm-hmm. Like every one of us.
Yeah.
And we have to, it's their pride and joy. And so it's like when you get, as a contractor, when someone asks you to remodel their kitchen, that's an honor for you to be able to go into their number one investment and add value.
It's a lot of trust, yeah.
A lot of trust. And so, but the insurance companies, and oftentimes have, because they haven't been they've went to states and asked for increases, different stuff like that, of like trying to make sure we can increase the rates of the insurance to kind of cover their butts. But at the end of the day, it's like, the transparency and honesty is what we need in this industry on all levels, from a contractor, from insurance, and
from the homeowners.
And from the homeowners, because again, it's all of them, right? And so that's kind of where it's like, so kind of going back to your original question, it comes down to like the homeowners need to understand that their policy typically has several more increase. So if we go back to the example of 300,000, your policy might read 300,000, but you actually might have 450. Just it's hidden in the policy.
What would you look for in that case?
Well, you have to read through the policy, and there's different endorsements, there's different things.
Different terms for that.
Yeah, they do, and every policy is a little bit different. Like, and so I had a fire loss that the insurance company, complete loss. Wasn't actually, it was 500,000. We read the policy, there was 700,000 that there were in
additional coverages
that they didn't cover. So the insurance company wrote a check instantly for 500,000. But
there's thinks that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
And now we looked into it and we found 200-some thousand. Now it's like, it's hard to, when you look at a policy, it's every insurance company writes them in differently. And so it's really tough to say this is what you need to look for, because it's different.
Policy specific.
It's very policy. It doesn't. If policy, it's another one thing, and it's just it's so convoluted and so confusing. Even me, I got a policy over the weekend to read, and I'm like, great.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean,
It's
you
just
get the packs. I mean, we were looking at our policy. The stack was like this big. Probably
yeah.
comes in the mail. If you get the certified copy
Yep.
with all the pages and everything, it's a big document. It's hard to get through.
Yeah.
And for
No.
us, it was also. I mean, you're mentioning the items and the additional coverages for contractors. Kind of the same thing. You're walking into an insurance estimate that's probably around 15,000, when the actual work is going to be closer to, let's say, 32, with the additional things that are required. That could still be the case, but the homeowner expects the insurance company to cover all of it, or for the contractor to work with what the insurance company gives. And a lot of the times, they just don't have that coverage. So there has to be that kind of the additional coverages and the exclusions, endorsements.
Yeah.
There has to be more education on that, and I feel like a lot of agents don't go through the extra step of explaining it, or a lot of homeowners just maybe disregard it. But there's a lot of changes going on too. So
And there's a lot of
to
changes,
keep
and I
up.
think the biggest thing that we're going to see here in Minnesota is, a lot of them are trying to do the actual cash value on the roofs. They have different RPS is one of the names that they use.
Yep.
Roof payment schedule is what it stands for. And the problem with that is that, when I bought my first car, I bought a Geo, and it was actually a Geo Storm.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
fancy.
Yeah, no, I'm moving up in the world. And I thought I was buying a hot rod.
Yeah.
And my mom was very, very convinced that I was buying a piece of crap. Because when I started it, the exhaust came from underneath and around. It was not the best, right? But in my mind, I was buying something like a Lexus. Like I thought I was getting,
LFA.
yeah. 6 months later, it died. But because I wasn't educated and I was just so excited, and so sometimes we as homeowners, we buy our first house, we get so excited, or we buy a house and we're like, you know what, I need to save money, I need to figure out my budget, that we think, and then honestly too, it's like as a salesman, I'm a salesman. Sometimes an insurance salesman just wants to get the sale, or we go online and buy a policy through their portal, and that's the worst.
Yes.
Because you don't understand it. And have I done it? Maybe. But the thing is that the problem is that we don't know what we're getting. And when that happens, when we feel like we bought the best policy, and then the insurance company says, no, you didn't. And it also falls back on the contractor, because the contractor's like, I need $32,000.
Yep.
And that's not an unfair estimate. It's the right estimate.
And the things we have to bring up during construction, let's say the roof is torn off and we see that the sheathing underneath is not to code.
Yep.
We have to bring it up to code.
And that's not your
Now,
problem.
is it the homeowner or the contractor that has to pay for it? Why would the contractor pay for those things,
Yeah, exactly.
It's up to the homeowner in that case, or the insurance company. And while we try to back up our documentation to make a solid case for why it needs to be replaced under code requirements and should be covered, we can't make that case policy specific, but we can say, okay, code requires this much gaps in between the decking and the planks, if it's a plank decking.
And so I have a great story for that on my house back in Kansas City when I lived in KC. So we bought a house, and the previous homeowner had a loss on the roof, and they paid for the roof. And we try to get new policy, and they're like, you got to fix the roof. And that's something too that you're going to run into a lot in the future, is there's been so many hailstorms in the last 8-10 years in Minnesota. You might get an inspection, and the home insurance company is going to say, hey, by the way, you need to do your roof for us to have that coverage.
Meaning somebody had it paid for, never did the work?
Never did the work. They didn't do the work. Yep. So went up there, got my roofer buddy over there, and he went up on the roof. He started to tear it off. 5 minutes, he's down knocking on my door. If a roofer is on your roof for 5 minutes and he comes down, there's a problem.
Probably not good.
It's probably not good
Probably
news.
not good.
And so he said, hey, you don't have any sheathing. Yeah. And I'm like, there's got to be plywood up there.
Those are big gaps.
Those are big. And so it was. He was tore off. It was shingles, underlayment, and then insulation board. Because it was
just the foam, rigid foam?
Rigid foam, because it was a vaulted ceiling. And
Oh,
so,
I'm surprised he didn't fall through the ceiling.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad he didn't. But anyhow, so all of a sudden I had an insurance, the previous homeowner had an insurance claim that his insurance most likely would have paid for the decking,
Yep.
but then that was out of my own pocket, the next homeowner. And it was like one of those things where he actually said, well, I didn't think I had enough money because he didn't know how to read the dumb paperwork that the insurance gives.
Yep.
And it took me a while to actually read that dumb paperwork. I understand it because like it took me months. Ask my manager at my my roofing company. He was going to kill me because I couldn't understand it. It took me a while to understand it. What's ACV? What's RCV?
Yeah.
And so what's happening in the industry with the roof payment schedules and is what's going to happen. You're going to get your paperwork and your roof is going to need to be replaced because it's damaged. And they're going to say it's a $30,000 roof and they're going to give you 10 grand.
Exactly what we ran into this year. ACV policies, the homeowner filed a claim because neighbors are getting the roofs replaced. Ask us to come over and just write the estimate for the insurance company. We provide the estimate, then they get back to them and they say, yep, this is good. Here's, the fraction of the total cost. And they find out after the fact, after the claim has been filed, they had no idea. Sometimes it's just the age of the roof. They may get the updated policy in the email or mail or something like that. And then, then you realize once you filed that now you have to pay $20,000 out of pocket for that same roof.
Yeah, and that's a main, like whenever you get something in the mail from the insurance company, especially around your renewal time, and it says we saved you money, they probably took coverage away. Just kind of it's what I've learned in life. It's a simplicity of life. If it's cheaper, it's not necessarily better. It usually is worse. And so what I've found is like when you get that paperwork, make sure that you're not losing coverage, or they're not putting a roof payment schedule on your roof to save you money, because the risk value is lower for them to be able to not have to pay a full $30,000.
Right.
They only got to pay 10. So now it's like if they do that, but what's going to happen for that homeowner? I hope it doesn't happen, but like if they don't replace the roof, they might be able to have a problem getting coverage in the future for that roof.
Yeah, they won't be able to get insured because it's been totaled out.
Yep.
So with the payment schedule, the different differences in coverages, like when it's broken down and depreciates over time, that's still an RCV policy?
Yes, typically it is.
That's confusing.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is like, yes, they won't pay for the roof, but if you had a fire, they'll pay for the roof because they burnt the roof down. Or, so it's kind of
specific.
It's very specific to hail
and so on.
And also too, like there's, I've seen this a lot in Minnesota too, and more, the deductibles are increasing.
Yeah.
And so you're going from $1,000. Actually, I saw a $500 deductible.
$300 one.
$300. It's like I'm like, yeah. you have the Porsche of insurance policies.
Grandfather.
It's like don't mess with that. But and so what happens is like they're going to a percentage base, which has happened a lot in Texas. It's just a percentage of your house. So if you have a $300,000 policy, you have 1%. That's $3,000. If your house is worth 500, and honestly, the prices of houses are just going up.
Yeah.
So that means the way that your policy is going to be written is going to go up. And so every year that if it increased 50,000 or more, your deductible is also increasing. So the reality comes to a point of like, and then there's the 1%, and then there's also the wind and hail deductible. So you might have a $1,000 deductible, and it's maybe not the percentage, but you might have a percentage on your windstorm and hail, or you might have an increase of $2,500, $3,000 for wind and hail. And so you got to understand that before you file a claim. You got to understand that before you kind of get to the point, because like you mentioned, all my neighbors are getting roofs, and that's and two, there is one big misconception in storms. There's an updraft, and so it can hit every house and miss yours. It can happen. I've seen it happen. But it's one of those things, insurance, but of course it's hard to say like everyone else is getting a roof. But they utilize insurance, sometimes will utilize that reason too much when it actually did hit their house. Yeah. So it's like
I've
one of those things
overused.
Oh, it's definitely it's one of those things where it's like it can happen, but at the same time it doesn't usually happen. And so I've seen it though. It's kind of been one of those things where like this is like it's perfect. Like, I don't understand it.
Textbook hail, like whatever the Hague engineers wrote up, it's that from the textbook.
Yeah. And so the other thing too is that when you have your insurance policy, you want to review. You want to, before you file a claim, before you do that, you need to know what is in your policy. And so it's really important to, bring in people like public adjusters, even attorneys, don't now. You can bring public adjusters in, but to really do a policy review. Like, hey, like what is, your policy state? Do you have a roof payment schedule? What are you going to be out of pocket? Like those are things that you need to understand. And it's really one of those things that I wish was more a standardized thing in our industry, because
like a neutral party review.
Yeah, just a party review, like saying, hey, this is and honestly, the insurance company should do that. Like they should.
Yeah.
Because they should say, hey, by the way, this is what you have. When you make a phone call to the insurance, to file a claim, they should say, hey, this is what you pay for. And, but again, that's not what happens. They just file a claim, then they get an adjuster, and the adjuster meets out on the roof. And if you're there, another thing that I say, never, ever, let an adjuster, just go out by themselves on their property. You should always have a representative. Like, it's always better to see, like, is there actually damage? Because I've actually went on, to properties and said, actually, well, the correct scope is this. And now I have to go tell the homeowner, by the way, this is the correct scope. The insurance company's right. And that does happen.
Yeah.
And then, but the problem is that when an industry is always, when everyone points the insurance company's bad, and then there's always points that the contractors are bad, then if you even ask a lot of people what they think about PAs, it's even worse. Kind of like what I started thinking when I got into this business. We all hate each other for some reason, and that's not healthy. Like we should all work together to make the homeowner and all of our customer whole. Like that's what we should do. And like there's a lot of forums, and there's a lot of that happening. I have to say that is happening in our industry. The more
we're finally seeing kind of a turn now, it's more of a collaboration between different areas of that the whole claim process. And even with insurance agents, we're starting to see that more of like the educational approach, especially with some of the loyal clients that have been with a certain carrier for a long time. You're starting to see that kind of, okay, this is what we look for. This is what you should get on your policy. Very rare. It's not very common, but those guys that are doing it the right way, it's like they know they may get a non-renewal on their, the client, or they may lose a client, but at least they're doing the honest thing where it's okay. Maybe they'll go there for a little bit and they'll see how that insurance company is, and then we'll come back to the guy that was taking care of them the whole time. Yeah.
So, no, it's definitely one of those things where if you have a good insurance agent, they should take care of you and walk you through that. Like I know of an insurance company that. He has a whole claims division that he put into his company to ask those questions. Wow. And it's just one of those things where that is a powerful thing if you have a good agent. But again, they do exist, but also too, like, it's one of those things where it's just like unfortunately, there's thousands upon thousands of claims. Then you have like the horrific stuff that's happened in California, and the total hurricanes, total losses. Like that hurts insurance companies, like it does. Yeah. And in a sense of financial aspects of it.
And those are not cheap homes.
No, they're not cheap homes. But it's one of those things. But that's the risk that they took on, and I think that's one thing that when an insurance company says, "I'm going to cover your home." They've taken on that risk of if a tragedy happens and as a covered peril, like
no question.
That's just here's your check. Like now we shouldn't gouge the insurance company in our estimates. We shouldn't. That's something that we shouldn't do.
Claims shouldn't be filed either. With and that's like you were saying with the newer contractors popping up left and right, and you're seeing. I mean, for us, the best thing that we've been recommending is getting those yearly roof inspection reports done. So if you're a homeowner, getting your roof inspected, documented, taking pictures of the condition of it. If it's a good condition report, great, keep track of it. Keep track of it for years. So when the adjuster does come out and he says that this is prior damage from prior storms or something, you can say, well, this is interesting because I have all these reports from a roofing contractor that's been doing my inspections, doing the yearly maintenance as I'm supposed to, and they say that there was no damage. And now you're saying this is prior. So when exactly did this happen? Because I have all this track record. So that's been one of the biggest things for roofing contractors. I think we should start doing a lot of documentation, thorough documentation, making sure that report is fully provided, to the homeowner. It's fully written, it's annotated. If you do see something, taking care of it, and not try to just file empty claims. That's it's just wasting everybody's time.
It's wasting everybody, and that's the other thing too. Is like, if you file an empty claim because a contractor, said file it, that contractor meets the adjuster on site. Like how much time is wasted from the contractor standpoint, and then also how much time is wasted from the insurance company. Like that's one thing that I just despise. Like we've got to stop hating everybody. And because I've heard insurance companies talk badly about contractors, and I know insurance companies have talked badly about public adjusters. I know I've been on that list, but the thing is that like, and I try not to, like, there's insurance companies that really frustrate me, sure, but at the same time is frustration wrong? No, but to talk bad about it, because I can't, like, if an insurance company does the right thing when it's called upon, like, that's good.
And their reputation travels. So either it's a public adjuster, if it's a contractor, or the insurance company, the reputation travels, and just do a little digging, and you'll find out which ones are good, which ones are
absolutely not. And that's one thing too. And that's where I always, if you're going to have someone come onto your property, it's always good to know who they are. If it's if the insurance company decides to send an engineer out, to the property, know what that engineer company is, know what their track record is, understand it. Like, this is like I mentioned, it's a homeowner's responsibility to really understand, like to protect their asset. Like if you have storm damage and there's a tactic or a ploy to get it denied from, or get it underpaid, like they should know and they should fight. And because it's worth it. The property's worth it. You really have to document the loss. Like that is, your job after you file a claim is the duties after loss, which is you document the claim and you show the insurance company what happened.
So
if you don't know how to,
the easiest things that would be taking photos, like if the storm is ongoing, getting a video, timestamps, getting photos of the stones, hailstones, if that's the case. And then just showing maybe go do a walk around the property, not necessarily climb a roof, but do a walk around the property, see if you have shingles in the yard, if you have debris in the yard, maybe put a tape next to the hailstone, freeze it, like keep it in your refrigerator or freezer to have it as, proof of the storm actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Like those are all things that you should do.
We were just surprised by a lot of homeowners. They weren't even around, and they would go in and they would file a claim for the date of loss that never showed up on the reports. And you were trying to like, okay, what am I working with here? Like, how can they? Like, you guys probably see this too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing is like, but there is a lot of.
Yeah, that's kind of like every side involved is, you have to be on the fair side.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, it's tough because even for a fact, I had a claim, it's a while ago, but like it was the storm of 22, and the policyholder did that thing, like just, went outside and there was hailstones this deep across their garage because it came into and like there was just holes and it's just crazy.
Somebody took a gun to it, yeah.
Yeah, and then their shingles, all of a sudden, like we're just shedding granulars, right? Just shedding them. And the roof was like 3-4 years old. It was newer. And the insurance company says, that's not damage. And I'm like, dude, this storm came in with violent winds and threw the stones against it. And now the granulars are just shedding.
What else would it be? Yeah.
Yeah. What else would it be? Yeah, exactly. And that one actually had to go into arbitration, and we won. But the thing is like it was really frustrating because they did all the right things.
Yep.
They had that, but at the end of the day, it had to go all the way there and have a judge decide if it was damaged or not. Which again, we documented it well enough, and it was true, and we won. But honestly, like too, it's like, that was a long process for the policyholder. It was over 2 years because it was about just around 2 years after it got all settled. just right on that 2-year mark.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's a really good tip to bring up for the homeowners too. Like it might go that long for the claim to be settled and then for the coverage to be.
God, you hope not, but at the same time, yes, you're right. Like it does take time. And, and again, like, Hague actually says it in one of their documents, like granules, dispersing and shedding can be hail damage.
Yeah.
That dispersed granules is damage.
Well, also, the whole mat thing, like you're trying to see if the mat has been broken by the hail strike. You have to break the seal, the bond where the shingles are sealed down. So once you break that, there's mat transfer. The shingle, the actual adhesive that holds together is broken.
Yep.
And now you have to either hand seal it,
Yep.
which a lot of people don't do, or it's no longer going to be, actually sealed down where anyone could lift up that shingle and then those adjacent to it.
And I think the other thing too is like, I think there is when you look at each state and, like lifted shingles, are they damaged or are they not? If it comes to wind damage, it needs to be creased, missing, or ripped or torn. And that's kind of the trifecta of wind damage. Well, but if you go into certain states, there's some states that will actually say lifted shingles are actually damaged. And so it's like, I think what we really need is a clearer aspect of like, what is hail damage, but not in a biased way of like, what is, but I think Hague actually does it.
It should be state specific too, because in some areas it will be obvious right away, like Texas, Colorado's hailstorms. You see that impact, you see the decking underneath the shingles, the wood getting broken. And then here in Minnesota, you have that kind of a delayed impact kind of thing where you may have a storm, let's say in August, winter goes by, and then we start getting calls in the springtime, freezing, thawing, and so on, the rainy days, and then the water intrusion starts happening at that point. So maybe not obvious right away, but over the winter, and then it starts becoming a problem, and then they could be outside of that claimable date. So
it's true, and that's the other thing too. Is like right now, certain companies have actually changed their suit against us clause to be 1 year. The statutes actually say 1 year, but then a lot of policies in Minnesota will say 2 years. And so that is one of the things that, I think everybody, and I understand people don't want to sue people. I get that, but like if it's right and it's true, we have to fight.
Yeah.
And I think we see that, like watch an inspirational movie, of a person that overcame a huge obstacle. It was because they had fight and drive and said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to do that to achieve the goal. And I think that's what we have to do in my industry too. Like we have to fight, and homeowners have to be willing to fight. Now, I can't take it to court unless the homeowner, is willing to go that far.
Well, it has to make sense, and it has to be explained properly by whoever is involved. That's like it's going to cause issues down the road if you don't see this one through all the way. And it could be just ignoring, correspondence is being ignored by the insurance companies or the adjusters. The homeowners get tired of it, and it's really tough to just wrap it up. But the complications that you could run into, and then just not doing the repairs that they directed, or attempting to do the repairs they directed. Later on, they'll say, "Oh, we covered that prior," and then you guys didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and that's kind of comes back to the same question that you said a little earlier. Was you have, you call in a false claim, or you call in a claim because a contractor said, "Call in this claim," and sure, that you're right. They told you to call in the claim, but what happens when they call in the claim? An adjuster comes out, and what does he do? He takes about 100 and some pictures of your roof and your exterior. He has documented what your house looks like. So now, even when I look at claims to take, and I'm like, was there a previous loss? That's a question that we need to know, because what documentation do they have? Like for instance, I had one claim that said it was a year ago, but this new storm happens. Now I'm like, okay, great. I have this claim, but they have more data than I have.
Yep.
And I need to come up with, data and say this is hail.
You're walking in blind.
Yeah, so I had a claim. I had a claim the other day. Got a call. I'm like, because I was like, these vents are dented. We need to replace the vents. Well, the homeowner didn't tell me that they had a claim a year before, which they paid out the vents. And so now I'm like, great. And of course the adjuster was great. He's like, he's like, work off of this claim instead, so that it was fine. We made it work. But the thing is like, we need to know that information.
The other way too.
It could have. It absolutely could have. Yeah. But the thing is that, one, you need to tell everything that you know about the claim as a homeowner. And again, they might have forgotten. There's a lot of reasons why.
Well, a lot of people don't think like if the insurance payments never got processed or if it was below deductible, nothing came through.
That's true, and that you're very right. And that one actually probably was below deductible. But so there's that you have to understand that they've documented something. Now I have to come back and combat what of course, the nice thing is that they're still within their time frame to fight that claim, so I can actually go that. But if they would have been past the 2 years or past the time that they don't let us come back and supplement the loss,
that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Like, and now this new hailstorm that did damage to the roof, I have a hard time proving that because they have so much documentation in that claim. Yeah. And so you alluded to earlier, like have your roofer like a maintenance program. Your roof should be maintenance every year, making sure all the sealing and the caulking is all good because it wears off, especially in Minnesota where you have freeze, like, it's 1 degree today. A few days ago it was 40. Yeah. So your roof got warm, then it got cold again. So like, no matter how good caulking is and all the sealants that are on the roofs are, they can bust and that can just be because of the weather. Yeah. And so you want to be able to make sure that your property is, because, well, one, the roof fails, there can be a lot of water in your house. Yeah. And then you can, like, I don't know how many times, you're probably better than I am, but like you get called and say, I have a roof leak. And I'm like, well, call a roofer. And then the roofer has to go out and try to find it. And source, roof leak is like finding a needle in the haystack. I hated it as a contractor because you're just like, okay, where is it going? And it can be here and it can be all the way up here.
Sometimes you don't have attic access to actually see where the water is coming in.
Exactly. And so that's really important is maintenance. But not even that is that you document make sure that they're taking pictures of their roof and saying, hey, this is the roof of the ages, whatever it may be. And they can create a report for you that just says, hey, this is where it is, and it's in good condition, it's in fair condition, it's you're at the end of your life, whatever it may be. Yeah. But now it's like
now you actually have track record of year after year. You have maintenance done, your roof is extended, and then that could bring up ventilation or insulation issues too. If you're looking in the attic, maybe those bath ducts are not connected. Maybe you're just getting all that steam and warm air getting blown into the attic. Your roof ventilation or your roof system has to be ventilated properly, or you're going to have the granule loss. And then at that point, it may look like, there's been a storm event or something, but that was actually caused by poor ventilation.
Yeah, poor ventilation. One of the reps locally said like 80-90% are not are not properly ventilated, which is terrible because this is the state we need good ventilation. Because of how much it changes and the weather it changes. So, and that's one of those things where, if you have in your policy code upgrades, it's a way that you can get that paid for on a storm if you've paid for that extra code upgrade aspects. And so there's a lot of things where it comes down to like, as we've kind of went all the way around, but it comes back to the policy. Yeah. It comes back to what it is and what you have and what you're paying for. And I tell you what, you will never, in my opinion, and I would never, is realize that, hey, I paid an extra $50 a month, but when an event happened and hail tore out my roof, it's paid for. That $50 a month, what's that, $600 a year?
You might actually get the coverage, yeah.
Yeah, even if it's 10 years, that's $6,000. But like roofs are a lot more than $6,000. It's just it doesn't make sense to pass that on and say, well, because unless you're saving a bunch of money and you have money to do that to your house, but typically we as a guy, like I couldn't replace my roof right now out of my savings account, so it kind of comes to one of those things where it's like we have to make sure that we have the coverage that we want and realize that if even it's $50, $100 more, it's worth it.
And then doing that yearly maintenance is going to prevent you from having to do that maybe sooner than you're supposed to. A lot of those things, even, I mean, we were going to do a video on kickout flashings next. Just a little piece of flashing. Probably costs $5 you can get it anywhere. Having that installed and then just preventing reframing the whole wall or drip taps above windows. There's so many little things there.
And honestly, like, kickout flashing, that's a code item. And again, if you pay for the policy correctly, that should be added onto the roof when you put it on again.
And that becomes part of the repair. Like if you're redoing the siding on the house and the roof and the kickout is missing, there's substrate that's not nailable, that's going to be policy specific too. You may be in for a big surprise if you have to pay $20,000 out of pocket to get that whole wall reframed. We've had that. And
it's not fun. Like, and honestly too, it's like, put yourself, well, you are the contractor, but like, that's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, yes, we tore off your roof because of this, but now we have a greater issue that is going to cost you more money, but at the same time is, if we don't fix this could cause mold, this could cause all this stuff, right?
Or it's already causing.
Exactly. And so it comes down to, you really have to understand what you're paying for. And honestly, like, when you tear off a roof, you just don't know what you're going to run into. Like we had that with a siding on a house in down by Webster. Like, the house was an icicle at one point because of how the wind hit and and ice got up behind the siding. And it was just the sheathing was all waterlogged, and
wow.
And so, like, of course they did have the right coverage and we were able to add the sheathing to it.
That's good.
But the thing is like, and this was actually a previous homeowner so this was a previous homeowner, but a friend of them showed a Facebook post of that. And so, it's just one of those things where it's like, it happened, and why it happened, who knows why. But, it's just, weather is a crazy thing, and it does wild things. And of course too, it's like with pipes freezing, with, with this deep cold that we get in Minnesota, like, that's not good for any product, like, even shingles, like, it's, are they rated for that? Sure. But you go from -30 to 100. Like,
the expansion, the contraction of
it's
the trusses and the sheathing underneath is just so much. And it's so much difference in just the way the material would react and different materials that you're putting on.
Yeah.
It's a lot more wear than people expect, and all the companies that are saying, this is a lifetime guarantee on the roof system. That really depends. I've yet to see a 50-year-old shingle on the roof that's, in decent shape.
Yeah. No, and that's one thing too, is like the reality is in the Midwest, there's a hailstorm, windstorm, there's an event it's been
it seems
every
like
year.
It's been more frequent.
Frequent. And so, like, your roof is not going to last 30 years, 50 years. It just, if it continues to go the path that it is going right now, like, it seems like hail's getting bigger and it's getting worse. And, like, it's just, the events are just insane.
Well, sustainability too. Like, you're trying to replace roofs that are under 5 years old, and that's all going to a landfill. Who knows how much is actually getting recycled? It's not as much as, some say. That's a tough one. And then for the homeowner, it's like, okay, well, you can pay, it's going to cost you more right now, but then not having to replace the roof in the next 5 years or something, or, like 20 years, and, for an upgraded material. Go that route, get that done, so you don't have to worry about the increasing premiums, the high deductibles, and so on. At least from that side, you're covered. And also going for the extras on the, let's say, like the accessories, the different pipe boots that are going to be upgraded, or the bath cap, the exhaust cap. Like, little things that usually we see failing, like, listen to your contractor, see if they have those upgrade options, maybe a higher grade material, maybe a synthetic product or something that's going to be protecting your house for a long time to come. So they don't have to deal with us again, or you guys, or
absolutely.
Or
you don't want to. You want to, like, and also too, like, if you do go to a Category 4 shingle, there are discounts for insurance companies to do that. But you also need to understand what what discount you're getting. I think that's one thing that's, we need to. You need to understand. Anytime you get a discount, anytime that something happens in your policy, anytime you get that thing in the mail that says, hey, we've changed your policy, we've saved you money, or we increased your money, whatever it may be. A lot of people are getting that mailer of saying, hey, your policy's going up. But one, search around. Typically, what happens with car insurance and homeowners insurance is you just pay the bill. Like, it just has to be paid, so you just pay it. In mortgage companies, you just pay your mortgage, and your insurance part is all part of it, and your taxes and all that's included. So you don't really think about your property tax. You don't think about your on that, except for that one time a year you find out it goes up, or it goes. Then you're like, oh, man, this is stupid. Yeah. But the thing is that you need to understand that there is sometimes a better policy out there that could save you money and give you more coverage, or there might be. You need to understand what you're getting. And that's one thing that your insurance agent should describe to you, and find a good insurance agent that or a broker that will be able to walk you through what your policy covers. Because honestly, like, my job shouldn't exist, like, because they should do the right thing every single time. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a reason why my job exists, is because they don't explain, they don't open up it, and so that's why I got into it. That a righteous outcome would come in every claim. It's my mantra. This is what I do, and so I always shop around. If you do have an increase or you do have a decrease, understand why. If you have an insurance claim, we provide a policy review that is there is a cost to it, but it's one of those things that $150 is really a good thing to pay for.
Like the roof inspection report, you're prepared, you know what you're actually buying.
Yeah, absolutely. And or get part of like a maintenance program with your roofing company. Like find a roofing company that'll come out every year and write a report. And yeah, there might be an expense to that, but again, if an insurance company pays, you go and you say, hey, this is the data, they have nothing to show. Like then you don't even have to hire someone like me. Like you've already spent money wisely and documented your house, your most valuable asset. And so that's kind of my suggestion, is like, before you file a claim, get a policy review. We'd love to help you out with that.
How can they find you guys?
Northstar.claims so we're out of South Minneapolis area, Jordan. That's where my office is at, but we service all of Minnesota. I'm multi-state licensed as well, so I have several states that I work out of. Okay. And so
prefer to be close to home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
same.
I'm not.
You're not traveling much anymore?
I try not to.
Okay.
I try not to, but at the same time, is like, I'm a sucker for helping people.
Well, you guys are honestly thorough. Like, we worked with Tim quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's the thoroughness and then just the responsiveness. A lot of the times we see public adjusters kind of go just AWOL. Like, you don't hear from them. You don't know what they're doing, what stage of the claim they're on. We've even heard of some public adjusters that dropped the claim, like they maybe went out of state to like a large loss, a large event, like a tornado or a hurricane or what have you. And then those claims just run out of time, and then nothing happens. And the homeowner has nothing. So they agreed to go and work with somebody to represent them, and then that person is gone. You guys have been very communicative. So
yeah, it's we're growing and we love it. And you guys, they've worked with Tim, one of my public adjusters, and he's incredible. And so we all have our own little gifts, but what we really want to make sure everyone's taken care of correctly, and that their policy pays out right. Yeah. And also too, like, I've had to have that conversation with policyholders, homeowners, and say, hey, by the way, your insurance is right. And that's always tough. Yeah. Because you're trying to navigate, because usually at that point there's a contractor that said, everything's damaged. Your house,
covered.
your whole house needs to be rebuilt. And it's like, no, that's not true. Yeah. But the thing is that if we have those conversations, we want to make sure that we do it right every single time.
Yeah, and you have a good network of, people that you trust to kind of carry that part of either the insurance restoration process or just the project overall, carry that through properly. That is going to be honest on the reports, documentation, and not try to make it biased towards one way or another. Yeah, no,
we definitely want to make sure that because we're regulated by the state just as an insurance company is as a public adjuster, and so like I'm licensed by the state, and so therefore I have to reapply for my license, and if there's too many complaints or these different things that aren't justified and not right, I can lose my license, I can lose my job, and honestly, like, that's one thing too, is like, file a complaint with the DOC, with the Department of Commerce, if there's something issue in your claim. Like, file it. If I do something wrong
public adjusters,
for insurance companies, insurance adjusters, file that. Like, again, like if we don't document the errors and the things that they've done, like, or I've done, like, or a contractor, like, like if people have done you wrong, make sure you file the right complaint.
Yep.
Because it's one of those things where that is the power. If the insurance companies are doing wrong and we're not reporting it, we're not getting movement to change it.
Yeah.
Like insurance companies spend a lot of money to get legislations, the numbers staggering. Look it up. Like it's unrighteous in my opinion.
I mean, the amount of money that goes into advertising too is just they have so much more.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things where it's like they try to have legislation written, things written, like they're trying to change appraisal clause, they're trying to change this, they're trying to change that, and there's thousands of dollars, of millions of dollars that are being spent by lawyers and trying to put themselves in a place where they have less risk.
Yep.
Because that's what their job is. And again, it's nothing. Like it's not bad that they're trying to.
And it's a publicly traded company. A lot of them are. So
yes.
they're in it for profit.
They're in for profit. And I want them to make money. I want all the insurance companies. But I want them to pay out the claims correctly too, though. Yeah. Like that's the main thing. Is like I want everyone to make money. And yes, is it frustrating to sometimes see? Yes, it can be. But at the end of the day, it's like they're also very, very big corporations, and so. But it's one of those things where. File a complaint with the department, and every state has one, or most states, I believe every state has them. And then there's, and if you need help, we will, do a policy review. If you do have a claim, we will do a claim review, and that's a free thing. Like we'll look at your claim and see if you have a fight. Reach us out to us. We'll do that for free because we want to see if you have something, if you have a claim that has got legitimacy that we can help you navigate through. And that's something that we do all the time.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for your time. This was very informative.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to maybe doing a deep dive, maybe do a policy review with you guys here or something.
Woohoo!
That'd
Yay!
be cool. Yeah, that'd be interesting. We'll see if you guys are good with that. But yeah, thank you for coming. We appreciate the time. And one more time, where can people find you?
Northstar.claims. That's or you can give me a call at 612-324-9100.
Awesome. Thanks for watching.